Imagine a powerful train thundering through the heart of East Africa, cutting across the vast savannas of Kenya, climbing the rugged highlands of Ethiopia, and stretching into one of the most strategic corridors on the African continent. Now imagine this. The driving force behind that project isn't China this time. It's India, partnering with Kenya and Ethiopia in a historic $14 billion railway deal that could redefine Africa's future, shift global trade routes, and spark a new era of South-South cooperation. This isn't just about trains or steel tracks. This is about power, strategy, and a new vision for Africa's economic independence, powered not by Western aid, but by bold alliances. Welcome to Ezicho Africa, where we uncover the truth behind Africa's most powerful partnerships. And today, we're diving deep into how India, Kenya, and Ethiopia are reshaping East Africa's destiny through the $14 billion standard gauge railway project connecting Nairobi to Addis Ababa. For decades, East Africa has dreamed of a railway that connects Kenya and Ethiopia, two of the region's biggest economies, linking their people, ports, and potential. The vision began as part of the Lapset Corridor project, the ambitious Lamu Port, South Sudan, Ethiopia Transport Corridor. The goal was to create a new economic artery for Africa, connecting inland nations like Ethiopia and South Sudan to the Indian Ocean through Kenya's coastline. But that dream faced challenges, funding gaps, shifting priorities, and competing interests from global powers. China, which had dominated infrastructure deals across Africa, seemed the natural partner. Yet, as debt burdens grew and priorities changed, African nations began looking for alternative partnerships, and that's where India stepped in. India saw something more than just a railway. It saw an opportunity to link economies, empower African trade, and build influence across a region that's central to global shipping lanes, right next to the Red Sea and Indian Ocean, two of the world's most strategic waters. The deal, a $14 billion joint investment to construct a standard gauge railway, SGR, linking Nairobi, Kenya, to Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, covering roughly 1,500 kilometers of terrain from the plains of Isiolo to the highlands of Ethiopia. At full capacity, the railway will connect the port of Lamu in Kenya to Ethiopia's industrial zones, the Nairobi hub to Addis Ababa's growing export industries, and further, integrate with regional corridors reaching South Sudan and Djibouti. This isn't just a railway, it's an economic lifeline. The project is expected to create over 200,000 direct and indirect jobs during construction, reduce freight costs by nearly 40%, cut transport time between Nairobi and Addis Ababa from 3 days to just 12 hours, and generate billions in trade revenue by 2030. India's involvement comes through a consortium of engineering and finance institutions, including Ercon International, RITES, and the Export-Import Bank of India, working with Kenya's and Ethiopia's ministries of transport. This is not a loan-heavy, debt-driven deal. Instead, it's a joint investment framework, combining government support, public-private financing, and long-term trade returns. That's what makes it different. That's what makes it powerful. Over the last decade, India has quietly become one of Africa's most trusted partners. While the headlines often focus on China, India has built relationships rooted in mutual benefit, skills exchange, and capacity building, not exploitation. India's trade with Africa surpassed $100 billion in 2024, with Kenya, Ethiopia, Nigeria, and South Africa leading the way. But more importantly, India's model is collaborative. It trains local engineers, builds local supply chains, and shares technology instead of keeping it proprietary. Kenya and Ethiopia both see India as a strategic alternative, one that aligns with their long-term growth without trapping them in unsustainable debt. Ethiopia's Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed has emphasized the need for diversified partnerships, while Kenya's government, under President William Ruto, has championed infrastructure diplomacy, connecting Kenya's transport system with neighboring countries to strengthen the East African Community, EAC. And India fits that vision perfectly. Once completed, the Nairobi-Addis Ababa Railway will become one of the most transformative trade routes in Africa. Here's how. Trade expansion. Ethiopia is one of Africa's top textile and manufacturing hubs, while Kenya is a logistics powerhouse with the port of Mombasa and the newer port of Lamu. The new railway connects Ethiopia's factories directly to Kenyan ports, slashing export times and costs. Job creation and skills transfer. Thousands of African workers will be trained in railway construction, engineering, and maintenance, gaining lifelong skills. India is already providing scholarships and technical support through the Indian Technical and Economic Cooperation (ITC) program. Tourism and mobility. With faster transport between Nairobi and Addis Ababa, regional tourism will flourish, from Kenya's wildlife reserves to Ethiopia's ancient cultural sites. Energy and industrial growth. The route will link industrial parks, dry ports, and power grids, including the Ethiopia-Kenya interconnector that already shares electricity between the two countries. Boost to regional integration. The railway strengthens the African Continental Free Trade Area, AFCFTA, by physically connecting two key economies, making intra-African trade easier, faster, and cheaper. This project isn't just about economics. It's a strategic masterpiece. East Africa sits on one of the most critical corridors in the world, between the Indian Ocean and the Red Sea. Whoever controls connectivity here influences global trade between Asia, Africa, and Europe. For India, this partnership expands its influence along the Indian Ocean rim, strengthening its presence in a region that China has dominated for years. For Kenya and Ethiopia, it's a chance to balance partnerships, welcoming development from multiple global players instead of relying on a single power. This railway is, in essence, Africa taking control of its destiny, choosing partners on its own terms. It symbolizes a shift in power, from dependency to collaboration, from aid to mutual investment, and from isolation to integration. Of course, no megaproject comes without challenges. Funding and logistics. $14 billion is a massive investment. Ensuring equitable financing and avoiding debt pitfalls will be critical. However, India's focus on joint ventures and local participation offers some protection. Terrain and environment. The route crosses deserts, savannas, and highlands, requiring advanced engineering and environmental management. But Indian firms have experience in such conditions, both in Asia and Africa. Political stability. Both Kenya and Ethiopia have experienced internal tensions. Stability and security along the corridor are vital for smooth progress. Public trust and transparency. Citizens must see real benefits, jobs, access, and lower prices to maintain long-term support for the project. Despite these challenges, the momentum is strong. Both nations have signed binding frameworks, feasibility studies are complete, and India has pledged technology and finance support through 2030. The Nairobi-Addis Ababa Railway is more than just a transport link. It is a symbol of a new African century. It shows that Africa can collaborate internally, Kenya and Ethiopia leading together, while engaging external partners like India on equal footing. This project will connect over 150 million people, boost trade, empower local industries, and inspire neighboring countries to join similar ventures. It could trigger a new wave of Pan-African infrastructure, one built by Africans, with trusted global allies, not distant lenders. Imagine an East Africa where goods move seamlessly from Addis Ababa to Mombasa, where trade thrives, and where the youth find opportunities at home instead of looking abroad. That's the real power of this $14 billion deal. This deal aligns with India's broader Africa vision. Over the last few years, India has invested in Ethiopia's sugar and textile sectors, Kenya's ICT and healthcare industries, energy projects like the Ethiopia-Kenya Power Interconnector, and major education and defense partnerships across the continent. India's strategy focuses on partnership, not patronage. It invests where African nations see value, not where global powers see control. By backing the Nairobi-Addis Ababa Railway, India cements itself as a trusted long-term ally, a friend who helps build, not burden. Looking ahead, this railway could connect even further. Plans are already being discussed to extend the line north to Djibouti's port and south to Tanzania, making it part of a pan-East African network. This could be Africa's version of the Silk Road, not controlled by one power, but owned and operated by Africans with global partnerships. It also aligns with Africa's Agenda 2063, the African Union's blueprint for continental integration and prosperity. And the Nairobi-Addis Ababa Railway fits perfectly as one of its flagship corridors. In Nairobi's bustling markets, traders already imagine cheaper logistics. In Addis Abeba's factories, workers talk about easier exports to the Indian Ocean. In rural towns along the route, young people dream of construction jobs and new opportunities. One Kenyan engineer put it simply, "For the first time, this feels like a project for us, not just through us." And that's the difference India is making, building with Africa, not just in Africa. The world is watching this partnership closely. Western nations see it as a model for ethical infrastructure investment. China views it as competition, but also a sign of Africa's growing independence. And within Africa, it's inspiring new confidence, a belief that continental unity plus smart partnerships equals power. This $14 billion project is more than a line on a map. It's a message to the world. Africa is ready to lead its own transformation. From the first spike of steel to the roar of the first train, this railway will stand as a symbol of unity, vision, and progress. India, Kenya, and Ethiopia, three nations, three different histories, now bound by a single purpose: to connect their people, empower their economies, and build the future together. This is not just a railway. It's a promise that the next century belongs to those who build bridges, not barriers. As the locomotives roll from Nairobi to Addis Ababa, they'll carry more than goods. They'll carry hope, ambition, and a new African story, written by Africans, powered by partnership, and built for the next generation. Movie camera, this is Ezicho Africa, bringing you the real stories of Africa's rise, one deal at a time. If you believe in Africa's future, in global cooperation, and in the power of progress, make sure to like, share, and subscribe for more deep dives into the stories shaping our continent's destiny. Until next time, keep watching Africa Rise.